that back in Canada in the real world. That's funny because when I talk about such a tight community over there, I'm not a community-focused person. I'm really not. I'm the guy who'll go to a movie by himself. I'll go to the pub, sit up at the bar and have a pint by myself. I'm very much independent that way, and the seeking out of communities is just not how I'm wired, ironically, in this world. So for me, one of the ways that I've reconnected with a part of myself that was lost is that I've gotten involved with the theater, with the live theater. And that is a community. It's similar to being overseas because you're thrown together with a bunch of people. You may or may not like them. And you got to focus on a common goal and you got to get it out. And so for me, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the people. I love everything about that community. It doesn't matter if you're black or white, fat, skinny, gay, straight. Who cares? You're part of it, and everybody's working together. And that, for me, I love. It's very accepting. My children are involved, and I think it's tremendous. So to that end, that's part of what we've done, or I've done. Just try and, when I first got here, to meet new people and to kind of expand my little tiny world. And I know Rebecca will probably have a few things that she's done to try and, because Rebecca is very much about community. That's where she grew up, in the church, where I did not. And that was very important to her, that community, that aspect of belonging. But I'm speaking for her. I'll let her do it.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So within the military, we have the Military Family Resource Center on every base, and they provide, there's 7 mandated areas that they are funded to provide support for, but they provide some childcare resources, deployment and reentry resources. So when we lived in Ontario, when Shawn went on his first tour, it was really difficult because we had just moved off the base. It was a training base, so the community was very transient. And we had just moved into a non-military neighborhood. It was really difficult not being connected, not feeling connected. Shawn wasn't deployed from Borden, where he lived. He was actually deployed from Petawawa. So all the supports were there for the families that lived in Petawawa. And I'd get these emails. Oh, there's a pizza movie night this Friday. Bring your kids, blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's great. I'm not going to drive 6 hours north to go to a pizza and movie night. So one of the first things I did when we moved to Edmonton was seek out the Family Resource Center and the different programs that were there. And it was hard. It was really hard. It's not something that I naturally do. I do very much value community, but putting myself out there is not something that I'm naturally very good at. So it was really difficult to overcome those sort of nervousness or shyness and go out and try to meet people. But because I did that, I did much better when Shawn was away on the second tour, having lots of supports and lots of friends, and friends whose husbands were also on the same tour. So, you know, we were in the same boat together. And then coming here, finding a church was really important, more so for me than the rest of my family. But I tell them, you know, this is what's going to make Mom happy. This is what's going to help me meet people. And you want Mom to be happy, because when Mom's not happy, nobody's happy, right? So, thank you. Anybody else?
Yes. Okay. So again, the question was the reason why I have Duke. And before Duke, as Rebecca alluded to in her presentation, she would be the one stepping in when I would go ballistic in public, when I'd want to punch somebody out in a shopping line, when I'd want to drop somebody at Disneyland. Yeah, it happens.
Try to steal somebody's parade watching. Then it's not so happy.
Yes. So he wakes me up. I'm having nightmares. He will. One of the biggest things he does is distractive behavior. So Terry and I are talking, and I get worked up. He's going to get in front. He's going to get in between Terry and I. He's going to come up and put his, do everything he can except singing Dixie to get me to pet him and pay attention to him. A good example is, 2 years ago, I just had him. I was dressed like this. I was in Dairy Queen waiting for my lunch, is when I worked for a First Nations band. And this guy was cursing and swearing at the young girl behind the counter. And one of my triggers is somebody who I think is vulnerable, whether they are or not. In my head, if that they're vulnerable, so usually that's the elderly, women without question, children. I just go into like, they're in danger. I'm going to engage the danger, trying to paraphrase whatever's going on in my crazy head. And so I'm standing there, this is going on, and I don't know how long I stood there, but that switch in my head went boink, and that was it. I was walking over to Buddy, and we were going to have a chit-chat of, so to speak. And Duke got in front of me and just started running around being a retard. I'm like, what's going on? So I bent down and started petting him, and thank goodness that act of me focusing on my dog broke that fight or flight. And so I didn't engage with the guy. I got my hamburger, I'm shaking, and I just get the heck out of Dodge. So nobody got hurt. I didn't get in trouble. So Duke was worth his weight in gold. And the funny thing, the guy had no idea what was coming. And so thank goodness for Duke. And the thing is that I am not a violent individual. I was a nurse. You know, I'm not violent. But when that fight or flight kicks in, soldiers don't flee, soldiers don't freeze. They engage. That's what we do. And so he is amazing. Before, it'd have to be Rebecca going, come on, get the heck out of here. And I'm going off the handle wanting to rip into somebody because I'm going crazy. The biggest thing that happens with many soldiers with PTSD, but in particular for me, is an overreaction to a common stimulus. So what would make you think, oh, that guy was rude, makes me ballistic, and I want to go in and tell him how rude he is and show him. Give him some justice. And it's the injustice, whatever, that gets me. And it's so that's that overreaction that then because in Disneyland in May, Rebecca had to step in, and some guy kicked me. And I just went bang in a fight or flight, and that was it. We were going to have a go right here, and he was, but thank goodness, Duke was kind of in the middle, but he doesn't work all the time, right? I was engaged. That was it. And then Rebecca got in front of me and went after this guy, saying, "You don't want to engage with this guy," and then I just kind of, at that point, I had enough to kind of back down, and then I wanted a hole to open up and swallow me. Because I almost severely hurt somebody in another country, in front of my children and many other children, not knowing what that lasting effect would have had on all them. What a horrible action. And so the fact that Rebecca stepped in and did that was all avoided. And then, okay, now I had to man up and live with the shame that, hey, that was wrong, I shouldn't have done that, and but at that moment, I wanted a hole to swallow me. And so usually Duke is able to do that for me. My in-laws live in Richmond, and what I get agitated in Richmond because of everybody on me, in my space, no situational awareness, nothing. And it makes me aggressive. It just makes me aggressive. I get off that ferry. And Duke really helps me when we're walking, gives us some space walking down the street. And so it's that kind of thing that he does. Like I said, he's not the golden magic pill. He doesn't cure it all. Unfortunately, my wife still has to save me, and that's what she does. She saves me. Well, saves the other person, but usually saves me from making a horrible mistake. Because I can't stand here and advocate violence. That's just not how it works. Much in the back of your head, you want to think, man, you want to smack that guy. But that's just not how it works. That's not how normal people function in society. And that's the switch sometimes, that disconnect, right? Rebecca talks about the 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's that living in the normal world of the constructs, how people, I said to her, what happened to the days of the nights where you tarnish someone's honor, boom, you're dead, it's done, we move on. Wouldn't that be simple? Forget the courts, I slit your throat, we're done. Or they slit me, we joust, But obviously, I jest for the internet. I'm just jesting. Don't come get me. I'm just kidding. Yes, no, obviously, but it's not that type of world. But that's the struggles that we live and with Duke. So, more questions, sir? There are statistics. I don't know what they are. Okay, I can't speak for the military medical system. Okay, for my little world, I know I have friends that have been injured with PTSD across a whole spectrum of trades in the military, whether they be infanteers or mechanics or nurses or doctors or medics, or so it transcends all trades and ranks in the military. It really does. I have a friend of mine who was a retired lieutenant colonel who, wow, you buy his book, Warrior Rising. His name is Chris Linford, and he was in Rwanda at the time of General Dallaire. And the book is amazing, and it'll give you a really good insight into his personal journey with PTSD and where he's come from now. I still look at him as a mentor, as when he lives on the outside world, every day he says, and Rebecca reminds me, he'll say, his saying is, what guy do you want to show up? Do you want the pissed off soldier who wants to take it out on the world? Or do you want the compassionate husband? Do you want which guy is showing up today for this engagement, with this interaction with as an individual? And when I lose my way, which happens all the time, often Rebecca will say that to me. What guy's showing up today? You know, that's why you have a loving wife. Sometimes they give you a hug, sometimes they give you a kick in the arse. And sometimes I need that kick in the arse to say, you're right, sorry, yeah, what am I doing? Stop feeling sorry for yourself. Put the best foot forward. So, but I dodged your question because I'm not the federal government. I know that, in my opinion, I think it would be safe to say that there are a lot more than what some groups might have expected there would be as a result of this engagement. As we know, it's been in the news, the number of suicides that have happened. And in my opinion, they are casualties of war. Right? And so, with the publicly documented stuff, I think that it's widespread. And my hope is that the guys, I was lucky, as funny as that sounds. I was a captain, I was an officer, I was a senior captain. I could walk into the hospital, I could go to the base surgeon, the major's office, knock on his door and say, look, I need some help. I got to do this, where do I go? And I would be guided. The young private on the lines doesn't necessarily have that opportunity, that access. He has so many more levels of stuff to go through for him or her to get that help. And so, you know, I would contend that perhaps there are more people out there that aren't getting the help they need, and I sure hope that they do.
I can talk more freely than Shawn can. I didn't sign any pieces of paper that said that I had to work on my birthday. Like Shawn said, I'm sure the numbers are greater than what is the statistics that are reported, because I'm sure that I know that there are a lot of people out there that aren't getting the help that they need and aren't being counted in those statistics. Even for Shawn, I mean, we were incredibly lucky. I really don't have anything bad to say about Shawn's particular chain of command, about Veterans Affairs and the supports that we've received since he's left the military. We've been very, very, very blessed to get the amount of help that we have gotten and the amount of support that we have gotten. But that being said, Shawn was a nurse. He was in the medical field. He knew the people in the hospital. He knew the people in the mental health office. It was maybe easier in that way for him to go. And even with that, you know, when he came home in September of 2008 and it was May of 2009, I said, there's something seriously wrong with you, and if you don't get help, I'm leaving. And he thought, oh, all right, well, I'll call up my buddy that's a psychiatrist and we'll go for a beer this afternoon and we'll talk it out and everything will be grand. Right? So even with the knowledge that he had and the ability that he had to access the system, so, you know, there's the overcoming the stigmas. You know, Shawn, I was a nurse. I didn't go outside the wire. I didn't firsthand see anybody step on an IED. I wasn't under attack. I didn't have to defend my buddy who was being shot at. What's wrong with me? Right? I was a nurse. I didn't do anything all that important. I wasn't involved in the fighting, so why is this happening? This can't be happening to me. There's no reason for it to be happening to me. So there's all of that the soldiers have to overcome. There are, unfortunately, many people in the chain of command that aren't as supportive as Shawn's chain of command was. And, so even when a soldier does start to realize maybe something is happening and maybe I need to get some help, their chain of command does have the ability to say, no, you don't. You don't need to get any help, or to make it really difficult for them to access mental health appointments, or to make it really difficult for them to continue in their career. So I'm sure that there are lots and lots and lots of cases out there that aren't reported, and different levels, I guess, right? People who suffer more mild symptoms that don't have such a debilitating effect on their everyday life. The person that Shawn spoke about, Chris Linford, he now recognizes that he came back from Rwanda with PTSD. He had another 15, 20 years in the military after that, right? Dealing or not dealing with the PTSD and continuing to be a soldier. So it's one of the things I've thought a lot about too is why this and why now, like, you think about, okay, well, all those guys, like thousands and thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of Canadians that fought in World War I and World War II, and we didn't hear about PTSD, and we didn't hear about suicides, and we didn't hear about all of this stuff, right? I said to Shawn the other day, I said, I wonder if it has anything to do with the fact that they weren't soldiers. Like they went and fought a war, but they weren't soldiers. They didn't sign up to be in the military. They didn't live within that pathos and that culture and that environment and then go and fight a war, right? They were just people like you and me, and that's horrible and that's awful, and it's not to diminish at all the sacrifices that they made, the things that they saw, and I know that they dealt with their issues as well. But I think the PTSD has a lot to do with that culture that you're dealing with, in addition to what the soldiers are going and seeing. And has also been some research that I've read about that there is a certain predilection. So they don't know exactly what it might be, but that there are people who are more vulnerable to suffering from PTSD when exposed to a traumatic situation than other people exposed to the same situation.
Just a quick follow-on with that. One of the things that is, my father was in Korea. Went over on the Athabasca, did village clearing, was at the Anshan River doing water-based artillery while Churchill's men advanced. My grandfather was in World War II. And I think one of the differences I look at, I think, I'm sure my dad has some issues. One of the big differences was they had 3 months to come home on the ship to drink, fight, cry, deal with whatever it is. In some part, I'm most certain my father has issues that were never dealt with. My first tour, I was on Monday, we had a mass casualty. I remember people coming in, we're dealing with them and doing what we do. On Friday, I went home early that tour. I went home to a colicky newborn, a depressed wife, and I came home to fix it. And my transition time was 3.5 days from that environment to an even tougher war environment of being at home dealing with that and coming in with the typical male, I'm going to fix this, what's the problem? So the speed of what happens, I think, is maybe perhaps part of it. And they recognize it more now. They try and they see that there might be some issues, and we try and help folks. And so now the more diagnoses are coming out. The second tour, we had 4 days in Cyprus. And then you're reintegrated. And so I slept a lot, and, I laid on the beach and just tried to wrap my mind around the concept that we're just going to walk down the street and go have a hamburger. Yeah. You're not going to the mess, standing to keep everything else. The trivial things, it sounds funny. Then you come home and, it is what it is. To put it in context, when overseas, I had a patient once that without going into all the details, basically was in a minefield. Their legs were blown off, and then from their hips down to their knees was all hamburger. And we're doing what we do, and somebody yells, "Stop," as I'm cutting stuff away, and my scissors were, I don't know, a couple centimeters from what we thought was an anti-personnel mine. We go do the protocols, the drills, everything else. We do what we have to do. Turns out we find out whatever later that it wasn't. On the walk back, once we're released from the situation, I'm with an Aussie or a Kiwi nurse friend of mine, and I'm like, "Yeah, hell of a night, eh?" And he's like, "Yeah, you don't see that on a Friday night downtown." I'm like, "Yeah, no." He goes, "Come on, let's go grab some chow. We'll go to the gym." That was our debrief. That was our mental health debrief, yada, yada, yada. I went and I took it out on the barbell, so I didn't take it out on somebody else. And that was my release, was going to the gym, just fanatically, in order to help myself cope. And there were countless other stories of patients that had tremendous impacts on me. One of the biggest things over there in dealing with insurgents, bad guys, whomever, people of interest, whatever label we would like to put on them. I was terrified by one patient one time, and gone through therapy to deal with the dichotomy of being Shawn the officer versus Shawn the nurse. Never in my life have I wanted to murder somebody. I want to take the sidearm that was on my hip and put a bullet in this person. Literally. And then you have to rationalize that. How can a sane, I'm not insane, how can a sane person want to do that? And yet I'm there to help and save lives. So that took a few years for me to kind of work through with some very, very smart people, smarter than me, with the big brains to help me through those feelings, right? Yeah, so that's just a little bit of issues that might be giving some more context of why I have a service dog, why I have a little bit of anger. I had tremendous medical care within the military once I accessed it. My thing was getting over the ego to actually go and get the help. You know, I'm going to see people who I was overseas with. But I got tremendous care. These people specialize in this. You can talk to a doc who is there, who gets it, who understands what you're going through and doesn't want you to sit on the couch and tell you about their mother. They actually understand what you're going through as a soldier and why you're angry or why you're on the edge of that cliff and you want to try and kill yourself. Been there. I was brought back. So it's that serious. 2010 was the worst decision I ever made in my life. What I put my family through. But I'm here now. There's light on the other side and standing right beside me. So, yeah, that's kind of just to sum it up for you. We could talk for days about this, and I still wouldn't be able to express it. I think one of the things, there's a saying, Afghanistan, for those who were there, no explanation's necessary. For those who weren't, no explanation will ever do. And I'll leave you with that.
There's, I think PTSD is kind of the glamour issue of the moment, maybe, right? So there is a lot of money and a lot of resources being put into dealing with it, which is a good thing. I mean, that's great. So like Edmonton right now is pioneering a lot of programs, and they're starting to recognize more and more the role that the family plays in the soldier's recovery. So there's that also. Shawn and I went to a program last summer called COPE, Couples Overcoming PTSD Every Day. And it was Shawn's friend Chris and his wife Catherine that started the program. Excuse me, it's a week-long intensive. You're in residence, and they had the one that Shawn and I attended. One of the mental health professionals that was there to assist us is the foremost authority, mental health authority on PTSD in the United States. So the 20, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 22 push-ups in 22 days that went around Facebook. They actually raised, I don't know what the statistic is, but an enormous amount of money. So people weren't just doing push-ups, but they were also donating money to Wounded Warriors Canada. And the money that they donated to Wounded Warriors Canada is funding the COPE program. So I think they have enough for 2 or 3 more sessions where they basically get 5 or 6 couples and you're housed somewhere amazing. We were at Bear Mountain Resort in Victoria, and the accommodations and the food are amazing, and they take care of everything, so you just focus on what you're talking about on your sessions and your recovery for the week. So just to kind of give you an idea of, I know a few people had kind of cynically put, oh, that's great, you're doing 22 push-ups, but what does that accomplish? Well, it did actually accomplish something pretty amazing. So how much longer do you want us to?
Very good question about Duke and his training. He's looking at me. You can see I'm getting my heart's going. But I got him when he was about 7 to 8 months old, and he was fully trained for me. If I needed more things, like there's some veterans who can't leave their house. It's that severe, or they're unable. They're not safe, right? And so they will build skills into the dog that meets the needs of that veteran. Because some veterans have, of course, the mental scars, mental injuries, as well as physical injuries. And so they'll have a dog that will be able to help them with those injuries as well. I say Duke's a bargain basement dog. He's an entry-level dog. For Duke, you're looking probably about $25,000. And he was donated to me, bless me, that somebody could do that. The gentleman who trained Duke through Manitoba Search and Rescue, they've got their Courageous Companions as their affiliate. They have the national standard in Ottawa right now with the Treasury Board to try and standardize medical service dogs. So there's a difference between compassion dogs and medical service dogs, right? It's very important, that differentiation of the training and what the purpose is of them. So I went out to Winnipeg for a couple weeks and worked with Duke. I had to learn how to handle a service dog. I had no idea. And so I worked with the trainer. Then we came back home. And for the first 3 months, Duke was tied to my belt. So literally everywhere I went, I make the joke and people think it's funny, but I didn't shit, shower, shave without my dog. And that is true. He was there. And so the reason being is then he saw me sad, angry, happy, nervous. He found the full baseline. And so now when he can pick up on the changes in my feelings by they can smell the biochemistry change in your body, right? So he can pick up on it. And probably here's my heart and my breath and all that, right? But so there's different levels. Like we have this gentleman also trains autism dogs, trains search and rescue dogs, trains police dogs, seizure dogs that are a true seizure dog done with blood, right? Blood training. You're looking at $80,000 to $100,000 for a dog like that. There's that much that go in. Like for me, Duke's worth his weight of gold, right? Like now when he takes his vest off, this is a good lesson. Like when he takes his vest off, he's just a goof. Like I call him my 100-pound retard because he runs around, chases his tail, we fight, he chases the kids, and he's a dog, right? But when he's like this, it's all business. He's doing what he's got to do. And from the side of why people don't engage with him, pet him, talk to him, because if he's looking at Terry, because Terry's feeding him or talking to him, and you upset me and I trigger and I whack you, he's not doing what he's supposed to do. So that's why it's so critical for people with service dogs that the dog doesn't exist. And that's so important, because by playing with the dog, you're messing up the training and you're putting the veteran or the person in danger, and also other people in danger. That's right. So all it takes is you to be talking in a firework. There's kids and their firecrackers. Bang goes off, and I all of a sudden jump, and I don't want somebody to help me or bring me down. Rebecca's not there. It can take a little while for me to spool down, and so that's why. Just as an aside, but yeah, the training. He was fully trained, and so about 6 months worth of training to work into him. Originally, he's a rescue dog from Saskatchewan. Because he's a Rottweiler and a German Shepherd, two strong, aggressive dogs. The RCMP grabbed him. Well, he's got no aggression. I can't get him to be aggressive. And so then he was donated to this organization, and they trained him. And on that note, that's very important, because it would be devastating if I get triggered, I get aggressive, and he gets aggressive. That's a really bad combination. He's big, I'm big. That's just not good, right? So that's why him being very calm and, hardly alive sitting here is very important. So that's Duke. And they're out there. People donate to Wounded Warriors and Courageous Companions. They fundraise like other charitable organizations. And the fact that the master trainer, he makes his money by training these $100,000 dogs, donates his time for us, veterans of the military and the RCMP. So, because, man, talk about a gift. There's no way a normal person could afford a dog like that. So, and what he does, I can't put a price tag on, as Rebecca's talked about. Holy Hannah, he's not the miracle cure, but boy, does he sure keep me on the straight and narrow. So, but thank you. Great question. Anybody else? We can talk over lunch too, or yeah, they do. They do different breeds. There's labs. Like when I went out there, they had the Australian Shepherds. They had him. They had a boxer. They had a lab, and it was just Duke kind of picked me. The trainer had a few in mind, and he just kind of come up and we bonded, and so then we saw that and we naturally went with it. So. That I don't know, because I'm not a trainer, so I really don't know. He has different dogs for different things. Different dogs are naturally, so like in the UK, they'll use beagles for bomb and drugs. Why? Because their nose is amazing, right? We're big on shepherds here, but in Canada, but that's because our military, you look at the UK and even the United States, they use the dogs so much within the military, and that's translated into the civilian world and whatnot. So, but yeah, there's different dogs, different things. I couldn't tell you what's the best or why. All I know is Duke's my man. So, there's one more there in the back.
Yeah, that's a question. As a civilian, my war experience is either like school dog fights or on the table.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a very good question and relevant for this audience with a question. My wife and I are at different places with regards to faith, God, and the impacts in our daily lives in the world. I won't speak for her. I respect her 100% with her perspective. Faith didn't, church or faith, religion, carried no weight for me with what I was doing over there or coming back here. respectfully, with 100% respect, folks. That's just where I'm at. When I met Rebecca, I wasn't a Christian. I met her at a church, and I progressed into it, became baptized. We happened to go to the Catholic Church. For me, I don't get wrapped up or bent around the axles over the doctrine. It's where you're comfortable, and wherever you're comfortable worshiping, and that's where our family landed. So it's fine. I'm okay with it. I think do I believe in God, or do I believe there's a God? Yeah, absolutely. From there, it gets more complicated, because I think beyond that, we get into the I'm right, you're right, I'm right, and I'm going to shoot you because my God's better, and so from that perspective, I leave it to individuals and to experts in their field. Like, I might not be Anglican, or I might, they put a label of Catholic on me, that's fine. I might not agree with the doctrine or agree 100% with what the priest, the father, is saying at the front of the room, but I darn well respect that he has spent years in higher education learning. He didn't just wake up one day and say, I'm going to start a church, right? That's how cults are formed. He spent years in higher education, in university, studying his craft or her craft. Just like I went and spent way too much money to become a nurse. They did this to become a minister or a priest or whatever their denomination or school labels it. Like Rebecca's mom has a PhD in theology. Brilliant. She's not a priest or a minister. That's what she does. She spent her life, she's dedicated to learning and teaching the Bible. Is that fair to say? And that's what she does. I might disagree, but man, I respect it because they went and they did that. So that's kind of where I sit with regards to God and faith. The whole get out of jail free card, got to have faith, that doesn't work for me. But I respect and I would defend to the death somebody's right to do it. Right? I don't care if with regard to we had a faith experience over there. I had an imam come into the hospital, and when we had an Afghan soldier or a citizen die, we would point them their feet towards Mecca, and we went and bought an Afghan flag at the market and put it over top of them. That was their ramp ceremony. That was us doing our best to respect them. The imam came and said, it's going to be written in our history books that Canada came, respected our cultures, and helped. There you go. That's my tour. I did what I had to do. I'm not there to convert you, you know? And that's what it was. And so back home, for me, my children, they attend Mass. Someday they'll make their own decision of how they want to go from there, and I have no problem with it. I'm really open that way. To me, it's very personal. It's a personal journey, right? Where Rebecca has her own, and I always tease, I refer, she's my religious expert after growing up with it and being given it in the breast milk, I say, right? And so Rebecca was brought up with it and has a really deep understanding of it. And plus, she's university educated, so therefore she has an understanding of the Jewish faith. She lived with an Orthodox Jewish roommate. And so if the idea to sit down and understand, not from this is right or that's right, to understand, take an academic view at something, I really respect her for that, right? So it's not the answer I'm sure you wanted, but it's just kind of, yeah, the church doesn't play a community in my life per se. It doesn't. Doesn't hurt any, and so that's why I know our family goes, and I'm okay with it. So I respect folks who do. I'm not being PC. That's just the honest answer. Yeah. I don't know if you want to speak to it. So yeah, I'm no preacher.
Thanks, Terry. Well, thank you for coming and sharing that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. It's not easy to get up and talk about it, I don't think, and to see it, go over it again with the pictures and everything to kind of bring back memories. And it's not always easy to do that, but we did want to take some time just to honor you for what you've done, and the other men and women too, who are still out there in Afghanistan and different parts of the world who are still defending our freedom. It's a huge sacrifice, so thank you. Stephanie, did you